think so.
Okay. In accordance with the open meeting law, the Lake Hopatcong Commission has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, and place thereof delivered or mailed or electronically mailed to the following: the Daily Record, and posted on the Lake Hopatcong Commission website. Would you stand and join me in salute to the flag? Pledge allegiance
to the flag
Flag,
of the United States of America, and to the republic
which
for which it
stands,
stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Call a roll, please.
One second. Just have two more people joining right now. Okay, Commissioner Crowley. Commissioner Fish.
Here.
Hoferkamp.
here.
McCarthy.
Here.
Wazowski.
Here.
Probs. Steinbaum.
Here.
Stevens.
Here.
Tessier. Thought he was on. Oh, hold on. He's joining right now. Hey, Bob, how are you? Just calling roll. Commissioner Tessier?
Yes, I am here.
Great. Will Susan?
He has a conflicting meeting, yeah.
Is Blanca Chevrest on tonight?
I don't know.
Okay. Gilfillan?
Here.
Hirschfeld?
Here.
Solaro?
Here.
Senator?
Here.
Zochek?
Here.
And Smith?
Here. Okay, we don't have any reason to go into executive session at this time, do we?
No.
Yes,
I
sir.
don't think so.
Excuse me?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay. Entertain a motion for approval of the minutes.
I have a question.
Let's have a motion in a second, Fred, then we can have a discussion.
So moved.
Second.
Now, any discussion?
Yeah, I hope that I was hoping Commissioner Wilson was there because it's a question for him. And Ron, you can probably answer it. I missed this in the meeting, but he stated that Jefferson Township received a grant from the Highlands Council to update their sewer plan from 2002.
Yeah, feasibility study or something. Just a feasibility study, not a do a whole, yeah. He said he did get a grant. We did get a grant for that, yes.
Well, that could be quite significant, couldn't it?
It could be,
As a first
because
step?
Jefferson, that would be the best thing for Jefferson to get it started, even if it was just around the rim of the lake, then they could expand it later after, you know.
Yeah, I thought that was very significant and it kind of went over my head.
Oh, okay.
So, I'm
That would be
glad,
great for the lake.
I'm glad to hear that. That's what we need.
Yep.
That was
Any
my,
other questions or comments on the minutes? Let's call a roll, please.
Commissioner Zochek?
Yes.
Fish?
Yes.
Hoferkamp?
Yes.
McCarthy?
Yes.
Wazowski?
Yes.
Steinbaum?
yes.
Stevens?
Yes.
Tessier?
Yes,
Gilfillan?
Yes.
And Smith?
Yes. Ever a motion to approve the treasurer's report and the list of bills? Fred, you have a motion?
Well, you want to hear the treasurer's report first?
First, no, I think once we've got the motion on the floor, then we'll have a discussion on the motion.
Okay.
You want to move it, Mark?
Okay, I so moved.
Somebody second?
Second.
Okay, Mark, you want to go through?
Okay, you all have the list of bills in front of you. There are 11. And I figured that almost 60% is grant money for the HAB grants. So that leaves a balance of about $9,000 that we are responsible for. And the bank, as of this morning, we had $310,939.99.
Good. We're healthy. Anybody have any questions, comments?
Yeah, I have a question. Is Fred Lubnow on the call?
Yes.
Yes, I am.
Fred, this is for you. Going through the list, and I think this was under a grant. I noticed the floating wetland islands for 20,000, and my impression that when they were first put in originally in Ashley Cove is they never did well. They didn't seem to thrive. They didn't get through the winter. They really didn't seem to be effective. And so my concern is, and I know we also have another system in Ashley Cove, but I'm hoping that all these things that are being done through grants and non-grants will come back with some answers how effective they are. Because I know that was really disappointing the first time around. I don't remember what it cost, but it didn't.
Well, I can answer that question. So, and we've been installing floating wetland islands for about 12 years now, and we've learned an awful lot. And one of the things we did learn, and Hopatcong was one of the sites where we learned this, is no matter what species of plant you use, those islands need to have full sunlight. And where they were positioned in Ashley Cove, they were not receiving full sunlight. So we are going to, so part of that money is to revamp the old islands. So we're going to replant the old islands. We're going to reposition them so that they get full sunlight, so that they do function like some of the islands that we've installed 12 years ago that are still fully functioning and removing phosphorus from some of the other lakes that we've installed these systems in. In addition to that, we are putting some new islands in. But again, that's the key that we've seen. We've seen this time and again with a lot of the lakes we've been working on. If the islands do not get full sunlight, the plants don't take off. And if they don't take off and really bloom, that's when they get stunted. That's when they have a hard time getting through the winter. So you need that first year. So in the spring, we'll be revamping the old islands, installing new ones, let them get, let the growth get abundant so that they'll be able to perpetuate and survive over the winter. We have some islands that are over 12 years old that are doing very well. And one of those islands removes about 10 pounds of phosphorus a year, which is equivalent to about 11,000 pounds of wet algae goo.
That's great. But I was leading toward a bigger question or a bigger point here. And that is, I think it's important going forward through the years that we take the cost basis for all of our different efforts and try to figure out just how much phosphorus was removed, as you've done in that case. So we can see what's really cost effective. And that, I mean, that if we can prove these things, that can lead, you know, in my dreams to the golden bullet, which is really securing the entire lake. If we could show that it's cheaper to sewer the entire lake, you know, so that's what I'd like to see going forward with all the projects, if that can be done.
Yeah, so to put that into context, we are, for every project we implement, we do estimate how much phosphorus is being removed. So that's as part of the long-term vision of the TMDL, of the watershed implementation plan, any BMP we install, any in-lake project we do, we always estimate how much phosphorus is being removed. You're right, sewering of the lake, I mean, we've done real preliminary back-of-the-envelope calculations where the sewering could contribute up to 80% of all the phosphorus that needs to be removed under the TMDL could be removed through the sewering. So you're right, if you could do one thing that would remove the majority of the phosphorus targeted, it would be sewering. Now, I do want to say that while sewering would take care of a large bulk of the phosphorus, we still want to focus on stormwater, not just for phosphorus, but other pollutants such as total suspended solids which wash into the lake, and then you have to do some dredging, as well as, flooding issues associated with stormwater as well. So, every project that's being implemented, we do quantify how much phosphorus is being removed.
Great, great. Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Fred, these islands are floating, but you anchor them. That's why you can keep them in sunlight.
Yes, yeah, they're anchored, and depending on the lake, they need to be tethered. We haven't had that problem in Lake Hopatcong because we've been putting them in Ashley Cove, but in some other lakes where we've installed them, if they're on along, say, the main body of the lake along the shoreline, and you get a lot of wind, not only do we anchor them, but we tether them to the shoreline as well. But in the case of Ashley Cove, they were fine in there. We just have to get them in a spot where they're getting full sunlight.
How many of these are you going to put in, and how many do you think ultimately there should be?
So we have 2 old ones that we'll be revamping, and I believe we're installing 2 more. And then as part of the 319 grant, we're planning to install 2 more at the southern end of Lake, down in Landing Channel. And there's one site at the very southern end that just gets full sunlight. It's one of the reasons why we picked that location. So we're looking to, again, like any of these in-lake or watershed management techniques, it's not a magic bullet that I would recommend all over the place. We're looking for specific locations, and so Ashley Cove is a good location because it's sort of, sheltered. And then the place down in Landing Channel, it's in a sheltered location with full sunlight. So we actually look for locations for the appropriate action to take.
So 6 would be a good number.
Okay, gentlemen,
Yes.
if we could, this would come more under your report later, and we're in a list of bills here. Anybody have any questions specifically on the list of bills?
I have one more, Ron, and that is, it's for Colleen. The bill from Eric Schneider, our planner. I just wondered, Colleen, do you have any idea? Can you tell me where we are compared to our budget with how much we've spent on planning so far?
I'd have to go back and look at that, but I can get you an answer for that.
That was it for me.
Okay.
Oh, Colleen, we're within the budget though, right?
Yeah, I believe so. Oh, yeah. I just would have to look at what percentage we're at.
All right, any other questions, comments? Let's call a roll, please.
All right. Sochek,
Yes.
Fish,
Yes.
Hoferkamp,
Yes.
McCarthy,
Yes.
Ozowski,
Yes.
Steinbaum,
Yes,
Stevens,
Yes.
Tessier,
Yes.
O'Fillon,
Yes.
and Smith.
Yes. Okay, what correspondence do you have? Do you have anything on the land use?
We did have, I think, one application from Hopatcong. It's already been heard, but it's available for review.
Okay.
We received a document from GreenVest on their phosphorus reduction projects that we'll hear about later in the meeting, and then also a proposal from Princeton Hydro on their stormwater ordinance support and guidance that maybe Bob Tessier will go over during the committee updates later.
All right, any other correspondence?
No.
Okay. Chairman's report. About a week or so ago, or right immediately following the last meeting, the question came up, Mark Crowley actually raised it with me, and so did Fred Steinbaum, that we want to look at alternatives about the weed harvesting for the next summer. So right now, where we're positioned in the calendar, I don't think there's anything we can do between now and June 30th, but I wanted to put together a committee to look at alternative proposals to going through DEP and others. And so whatever they are, the proposals. So I appointed a committee. Crowley is the chair. Dan McCarthy's on the committee, Ryan Gillifan, and Fred Steinbaum, and Crowley's the chairman, and I'm also the 5th member of the committee. So we're going to come up with 2 or 3 different proposals of what we could do possibly, and then we'll come back to the full commission for maybe in January, February with some ideas and see if we can't get some consensus of where we want to be as of July 1 when the new budget starts. In the meantime, now that we know that we're kind of stuck or we're going to be dealing with DEP through the spring, that we should be able to get that memorandum of understanding updated and so we can get that approved to get us through June 30th. And that's the only thing that I have at this point. It's the only thing I have at this point. So any commissioners want to have any comments they want to make?
Ron, I would ask, where are we with the investigation where we can
we're
go back in and,
we'll go back in. They're still saying January.
okay,
We have asked permission again to take that harvester inside to get it out of the weather and have it covered. We have not gotten a response, either negative or positive on that. So we're stuck with that. It's a bureaucracy, and I don't know. Somebody told me DEP no longer is running that investigation, or maybe they never were. Somebody else, some other department. Colleen, can you help me?
POSHA is the one running that investigation.
Okay.
Unfortunately, DEP doesn't have any say over whether the harvester can be moved. They're also waiting for an update in the.
So the good news is that
Ron, I can give a slight update on all this.
well, you will when you do. You want to do it now, or you want to do it when you do your report?
Well, if you want to talk about this direct issue, since you guys are talking.
Let's
about
do it. We'll talk about it. Go ahead.
So we have requested of the various lawyers who are involved with possible litigation if we can move the weed harvester inside. We worked with the Attorney General's office. We're crafting a letter. That letter will go out in the next few days, and hopefully we'll get a response shortly after that. And our goal is to get the weed harvester inside and try to get the oil taken out of the motor and
You
get
get
the
the
water
water
out of the motor
too, yeah.
and stuff like that. So we're trying. We're hoping that we'll be able to do that soon.
Yeah, me too. Good job, Josh. That's good. Yep. And by the way, while we're on that subject, a piece that the DEP has hired that part-time diesel mechanic that came up. I mentioned it last time, I think, at the last meeting. He's been hired and he starts in January, but he's a part-timer, but he's experienced, long-time experienced diesel mechanic. And I guess you were in on the interview, right, Josh?
I wasn't, no, but Melissa
Okay.
was.
But Melissa was, and so was Mike. Okay, anyway, let's move on. Is any other commissioners? Okay, let's move on. The next item is,
I had one comment, Ron. Sorry.
Sure.
Just wanted to know if we've heard anything back from Murphy with regards to the settlement with the quarry.
yes, we do have that, and I think that comes up under the updates to going down below into the, yes.
Oh, okay. I didn't see it in the agenda. All right.
It just says Weldon Quarry, but we'll go through the quarry deal.
Is the Weldon quarry material something for executive session? Because that's.
No. No.
Okay.
I don't believe so. It's nothing that we haven't discussed. There's no settlement. There's no negotiating, nothing, just where we are, just an update. We're getting close to the end, I believe, though, Dan.
I just want to make sure we're not in a situation where somebody says, well, the lawyer said this and the lawyer thought that.
No, I don't believe we're in that spot.
Yeah, Ron, I think if it's anything we've discussed earlier today, then maybe it should be executive session.
All right, we can do an executive session and later on after we get the updates, or we can do it before the updates. I don't care how you want to do it.
Yeah. If it could affect our position with regards to the litigation or even state the position, it would be good to be in executive session.
All right,
Or even our thought processes vis-a-vis any settlement proposal, that should be executive.
there's no
session as
settlement
well.
proposals on the table, so that's that's not there, but we can bring you up to date with the facts where we are.
I'm speaking hypothetically in case that comes up, that's all.
Okay. All right, so Marty, you're up.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everybody. Okay, a few things actually.
Should I refer to you now as the executive director of the foundation, or?
No, there is nothing to announce.
Oh,
We will have actually a meeting on that in Thursday evening internally.
Oh, okay,
Okay, so nothing to report.
okay.
Okay, on the advocacy front, we actually had a meeting of our new Public Lakes Alliance of New Jersey today, which Colleen participated in. Hopefully that is, the first steps in a statewide group that will lobby and really bring support from all over to the state to the funding and cause of public lakes. In fact, someone from Fred's office also participated in that. We appreciate. So, it's taking baby steps, but it's getting there. It's even has its own logo now. So, we're looking to bring in other lakes that are, in that public lakes arena slowly and put this together. We had our last meeting with the mayors on the 16th, which has become pretty much like an every other month meeting, and it's been very productive. Ron, you and Colleen normally participate in that. We have our next update meeting with DEP, which the mayors and the administrators and Ron and Colleen will be participating in on Thursday with a full schedule of topics to discuss with DEP. And our Coalition for the Delaware River Watershed actually named lakes as their one of their 5 priorities for the year to support and lobby for statewide. That's important because that includes organizations like Autobahn, League of Conservation Voters, a lot of groups with a lot of horsepower. And basically, the move is to get lakes as a permanent funding line in the governor's budget, even if it's only at the $2 million a year mark. And that also would be similar to what we almost had last year, would be a person within DEP that sole job is lakes management for the state. So there's a single kind of point of contact and focus within DEP for lakes. So hopefully some progress will be seen there. And actually next week for the Coalition for the Delaware River Watershed, which of course Lake Hopatcong is part of, is their annual State House Week. Since you can't go down to Trenton and talk to your legislators, it's all being done by Zoom. So there'll be, as of last note, there will be 16 calls, and that's only increasing. And there again, lakes will be a priority for everyone that talks to the legislators. So hopefully some good news coming there, and lakes will finally get, the resources it really should have had for years. On the education front, the intent is to put the floating classroom in the lake next year, even if we cannot service schools in the spring semester, but just to have it there for educational purposes. And hopefully by summer, we can have a full adult program. I see Donna's on tonight. That kind of falls under her. On the recreational and community area, we had a nice trail walk the Friday after Thanksgiving, which went actually very well. And we want to lead that to a bunch more kind of focus on trails around the lake in the spring, since trails and walking has become so much more something people are looking at. And we've also had some talks with the 4 municipalities of how we can work with them to better kind of coordinate the trails amongst the 4 amongst the 4 municipalities, and how where they could maybe use some additional assistance. On the environmental area, which you folks really have the lead on that, but we try to assist where we can. There's a good focus, and Colleen's your best point of contact on that for really, I'll say parks and streams right now, since that may be part of the NIFWIF application. But we've had separate meetings with, the borough of Hopatcong, and Brad has been a real focus there on Witten Park, which a lot of us old timers would know as Sperry Springs Park. Also on Landing Gateway Park, We've had some discussions, Rich, with the mayor and the administrator of, what we might be able to do to finally get that land transferred from DEP. And that's going to come up on Thursday's meeting. Liffey Island, Donna had already discussed with Eric about getting some trails onto Liffey Island, since the leach trail is so good to get you there. So that hopefully is going to move forward. And the final thing I'll just mention is we had the discussion about the floating wetland islands. One of the things we've been starting to kick the tires on is we have our own island, as most of you know, in Lake Hopatcong, known as Floating Island. And over the years, we've seen it kind of it's in Landing Channel in Roxbury. It's kind of, I'll say, become undone in more recent years through natural sources and waves and things. So we're looking at the possibilities of whether the same basis that we use for floating wetland islands can be used there as kind of a natural restoration of that island, and see if DEP might go along with it. And one of the real benefits of that could be, we've been talking about possibly dredging Landing Channel for a long time. That might be a perfect place to put the material you dredge out of Landing Channel and just move them to a different part of Landing Channel. DEP has not usually looked highly upon ideas like that, but we're going to try to, take that back up and see if we can have some meaningful dialogue, since it'll allow us to put in floating wetland islands. Maybe we can do something like this that's a little more creative, restore something that's already in the lake, and also bring that benefit of, cleaning out some of the phosphorus that's already in that part of the lake. So kind of some fun stuff that we're working on. And I'll be happy to take any questions.
Okay, no questions from Marty. We can always catch him later.
Okay.
Fred, you're up.
All right, thank you. So I forwarded to Colleen a memo. So I'll be going through a lot of the material based on that memo. So if someone wants a written document, Colleen can forward that to you. But I'm just going to rattle off just as quickly as I can some of the activities that are going on. First, with the HAB grants, I do want to mention that in January, we'll be submitting the year-end report for the HAB grant. So it's a 2-year grant. We'll submit a report for 2020. We've already initiated some of the data analysis, and we've been presenting some of that data at a number of virtual events. We presented at the North American Lake Management Society. We also did a presentation for New Jersey American Water Resource Association. And then later this week, we'll be presenting the same presentation as a webinar for the Lake Hopatcong Foundation this Thursday, the 10th of December. And again, that report will be submitted in January. We're working with both the Borough of Hopatcong and a contractor to clean out the aquafilters and install them with some biochar sleeves. And Colleen, I'll get you that draft letter tomorrow that we'll forward to the borough about how we're going to move forward on that. We still need to conduct some more monitoring events for the biochar sites that we have installed. I can say that the biochar that was installed in this 2 stormwater ponds, we were getting very high removal rates of phosphorus as opposed to those installed in streams. And the manufacturer did tell us that we would get higher removal rates where you have higher contact time. So that's why we're getting like up to 80–90% removal in the stormwater ponds. But in the streams, if we get 50%, that's good. Again, that was expected, and we wanted to quantify this to determine where we should be installing this material. And as part of the grant, we have 3 nearshore aeration systems to be installed. 2 of the 3 systems have been installed. The 3rd system, which is a nanobubble system, will be installed at the Mount Arlington Municipal Beach. We're hoping to install that late winter, early spring of next year, and then all 3 systems will be monitored and evaluated to determine their effectiveness to minimize or avoid HABs at those 3 beach areas. And then finally, we'll continue to treat Ashley Cove with Phoslock in 2021. We'll be installing the floating wetland islands, and we'll continue to monitor. Again, just to give you some good news relative to Ashley Cove, visually it looked better this year, but when you look at the phosphorus numbers, So prior to using Phoslock, phosphorus concentrations were about 0.07. We were getting down to about 0.04 this year with the Phoslock. You know, we want to get down to 0.03, but we've had some success of reducing the available phosphorus in Ashley Cove. The next subject I have is Quarry Cove, and the only thing I'll mention with that is I did submit a little earlier today a outline of what would be required in terms of permitting and engineering design plans, all of that, and the associated costs with both the feasibility, the permitting, and the implementation of Quarry Cove. All that information, including some budget estimates, were all provided to Colleen earlier today. And I'll just leave it at that with Quarry Cove. And now moving to activities for 2021. Again, in January, we'll be submitting our 2020 year-end water quality report. So that's the annual report. It will include some of the data that was collected as part of the HAB grant. Not all of it, since we'll have a separate report for that. And we'll review the River Styx Crescent Cove water quality data relative to the borough's installation of the aeration system. We're working on finalizing the contracts with the Commission and DEP for the 319 grant. Once that's hammered out, Princeton Hydro will submit a contract between it and the Commission for our services associated with that grant. We're hoping that that project can be initiated sometime early next year. We're currently working with the Borough of Mount Arlington to finalize our contract between them and us for the Mount Arlington Beach and Park Restoration Plan. Those funds are coming from a grant that was awarded to the Borough of Mount Arlington through the New Jersey Highlands Council. And the nice thing about it is we're planning to use the activities of that grant as part of a match for NIFWIF funding for the stream that connects Memorial Pond to Lake Hopatcong. So that will actually be a match toward a larger grant for implementation funds. Related to that, we're working on 2 proposals to be submitted to New Jersey Highlands Council for the survey work and engineering designs. Number 1 for Whitten Park, and number 2 for those 3 stream bank projects along the Musconetcong River right below the dam. So all 4 of those projects really are in the WIP, but we're looking to, again, to use New Jersey Highlands Council funds as a match for NIFWIF funding for the actual implementation of those projects. We'll provide, and so currently we're also putting together the contracts for 2021 for water quality monitoring, cyanotoxin monitoring, and general consulting. The budgets and the scope of work will be the same for the cyanotoxin monitoring and the general consulting. For water quality monitoring, I would like to add Landing Channel as another monitoring station so we can continue to evaluate the impacts of the Phoslock treatment that was conducted earlier this year. I'm also asking to add some more cyanobacterial cell counts, and we'll be using our meters to collect more data on phycocyanin and cell counts. So even though we're asking to do more next year, the price will actually decline for next year because we do not need to resubmit our QAP, or Quality Assurance Protection Plan. So even though we're adding some more samples we want to collect, the total price will actually decline from 2020 to 2021 because we do not have to resubmit that QAP. That QAP only needs to be submitted maybe once every 5 years, or if we do any sort of major changes to it. So we just updated it because of the HAB grant. And associated with monitoring, something I did want to bring up was before the HABs hit, we were going to do some routine aquatic plant monitoring, some survey work for the aquatic vegetation. And then once the HABs hit, that was sort of put on the side. Given how we saw the plants respond to the aeration system, and given how we've seen the plants throughout the whole lake respond, where we had a high amount of plants earlier in the season and they sort of seem to decline in spite of no harvesting. And we're recommending we may want to do some limited aquatic plant monitoring, maybe twice a year for some quantitative or semi-quantitative monitoring, So what I'd like to do is in January submit a proposal for the commission to consider to start up that idea of monitoring the aquatic vegetation again. I need to continue talks not only with the commission but also the Hopatcong Foundation. I know both organizations have brought up concerns over impacts of winter salting and de-icing activities. So I do want to reestablish that conversation with both organizations. A proposal was submitted late November of 2020 for Princeton Hydro to provide guidance and consulting services and updating and augmenting the stormwater ordinances. I won't get into that since that will be discussed a little later. And then the final thing is, and again, this will be discussed, but GreenVest is here to give a presentation on the phosphorus removal and covering some of those projects in the watershed. So that's my report.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions, comments? Okay. Go ahead, somebody. Bob, was that you?
Yes, I thought my mic was off, but
Oh.
the Quarry Cove material, did Colleen send that out to us?
I just sent that to her maybe 3-4 hours ago.
She's good, but we can't.
Yeah. So she just received it today.
I think I did send it out.
I've got it.
You got it? I didn't see it, that's why I wasn't looking for
Bob,
it.
we'll touch on that in executive session.
Okay, I'll look at the attachment.
Yeah. Anybody else have any comments, questions?
I got a question for Fred. Based on what Marty said about the island and the landing channel, how feasible would it be to replant and restore that island?
Went to sleep.
Fred,
Everything froze.
He's frozen.
Oh, I thought he was looking for an answer.
that-
Okay, I think the question was is how feasible is that proposal?
Replanting the landing channel floating island.
Yeah, I turned my camera off. It was saying my internet was unstable, but basically, Marty's idea, I think it's a really good idea. I know in the past, as he said, from our experience, DEP has had a lot of issues moving sediment within a water body. They don't, they understand if you're going to take it out, but moving it around can be difficult to convince them. I think the key would be to present it as creation of habitat. So I think, yes, we would talk about removal of nutrients, but I think the real key is to sort of emphasize that part of that would really be creating habitat. And it may open the door for some other funding, such as NIFWIF for implementing that. I mean, it will definitely be an uphill battle with getting approval from DEP, but it's definitely worth a shot.
If we were to not, I'm sorry, if we were to not move sediment from the bottom of the lake to the island and rather just replant it and use the floating island as it is, I imagine the size of it would be would remove quite a bit of phosphorus if we were to do that.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, the more vegetation that's taking phosphorus out of the water column, the less phosphorus there is for the HABs, the nuisance algae. So, and that's, I mean, that's really the whole idea of the artificial floating wetland islands is you're diverting those nutrients away from the algae and going into the plants. And something that I do want to emphasize with those floating wetland islands is when you look at them underneath, you just see this huge canopy of all this attached algae. Well, all that attached algae attracts all these small little microinvertebrates. That attracts small fish and that attracts big fish. So you're helping to divert a lot of the phosphorus, not just into the plants themselves, but a lot of it is going into the microbial growth underneath the island. As a matter of fact, studies have shown about 80% of the nutrients are going into the microbial life and only 20% is going into the plant biomass. But then all of that is recycled in that the little micro animals eat the algae, and then the small fish eat the microinvertebrates, and then the big fish eat the small fish. So you're really diverting phosphorus, away from the algae into another food chain.
Okay. Anything else for Fred? All right, updates, State Park. You gonna handle that, Josh?
Yeah, I can do that.
We did have one other thing right before that, which was the GreenVest presentation. Do we want to do that now or later?
I'm sorry. We could do that now. Let's take it in the order you got on the agenda. You're right. I'm looking.
I didn't mean to interrupt you.
The GreenVest. Okay. Go ahead, Colleen.
Good evening. Colleen, did you have the PowerPoint that you could pull up, or should?
Yeah, I can pull that up. Just give me 1 second.
And while she's pulling it up, I'll just give a brief introduction. We had presented to you guys back in August an innovative approach to solving stormwater and really phosphorus and sediment. We're focused on reductions in the lake. We've done this in a lot of other regions, mainly in the Chesapeake Bay area. And then last month we had submitted a qualification package that was based on some questions you guys had in the initial August meeting. But we just wanted to give a brief update, and this short presentation is an attempt to answer some of the questions that came up in the August meeting and give a little more detail on some of these funding mechanisms and what this could look like. I have a colleague of mine, Brett Berkeley from my office, that's going to lead the presentation. And we also have some folks from Hannon Armstrong, who is our funding partner, because that was a majority of the questions that we got in August centered around some details on the funding. And we're going to try to answer some of those as best we can at this preliminary stage. With that, Brett, are you there?
I'm here. Happy to be here. Thank you for having us. We promise to keep this expeditious and try to avoid any repetition. The commission has been doing some great work since 2011. You have your hands full. You have an issue that you're trying to deal with, a complicated one. And Princeton Hydro, as your trusted advisor, has been doing a great job in setting the stage for defining the problem and really paving a pathway to solve the problem. So, I'd like to just start with a question. It could be a rhetorical question or anybody could answer. If the commission had a wish, or individual commission members had a wish, for the future of the lake and how expediently a healthy condition could be returned to the lake, what would that wish be? Anybody?
How about sewer the lake and clean all the stormwater that comes into the lake?
And Robert, I think that, would probably be everybody's objective on this call. And thank you for speaking up. And ideally, over what period of time would everybody like to see that happen? I mean, I assume as quickly as possible, assuming that solution would be effective. Effective in cleaning up the lake, effective in, restoring the level of recreation that everybody embraces, to either live around the lake or come to the lake and enjoy it, and to ensure that you're spending your money wisely, right? And we've, as Brian said, a lot of our work in the last few years is focused on the Chesapeake Bay region. And the Chesapeake Bay is simply, a larger version of Lake Hopatcong. And a lot of the work that we've done has focused on phosphorus reduction, sediment reduction, and nitrogen reduction. And we've done it in a variety of different ways. And the problem is on a larger scale. So, and of course, we're a New Jersey-based company. We've been operating in New Jersey for almost 30 years. And we've always enjoyed the work that we were doing in New Jersey. And I think Brian's proximity to the lake and our longstanding relationship with Princeton Hydro is what got us interested. And we really started to think that perhaps we can provide an innovative way to approach this problem, which you've already defined, and help the commission solve this problem on a more expedient timeline. So I think, what we'd like to do is just, again, very briefly, outline our vision for this program, which really mirrors the WIP that you all have had the forethought to pull together, and Fred has been guiding you through. We want to communicate some of the benefits and the advantages to a program like the one that we're proposing. We took the time to try to put some numbers to this, based on other commission meetings that have taken place where you've given us the privilege of participating or attending. And in doing that, we're trying to define the scale of the program and a timeline for implementation. And then we want to talk a little bit about the money, about the financing, which I think everybody is interested in. Colleen, if we could move to not the next slide, but let's jump to the one after the purpose of the presentation. So if we could go, thank you very much. Again, I think you all have done a great job in laying out the watershed implementation plan, which puts you in a position where you really understand the problem, the scale of the problem, and what needs to be done to fix the problem. And then you find yourself in this situation where the scale of the problem can be daunting, and you have to figure out a way to pay for it. And we think you guys have been doing a great job in doing what you can to pull down grant funding with Princeton Hydro's help. And it's just going to take time to address the issue. And I think, Fred, you had said a little bit earlier in the program that sewering could potentially reduce 80% of the total phosphorus load, but you still can't ignore the other pollutants that are coming in the stormwater. So I think we can kind of cover both of those in the next slide. So we have three basic tenets in the program. One is a timeline. Sorry, Colleen, if we could go back for just one, thank you. One is a timeline, and we think we can expedite this timeline where we can implement the entire non-structural BMPs identified in the WIP within a two to 3 year time period, which could yield a substantial reduction in nutrient loading and show real-time significant benefits in the health of the lake and the quality of the recreation. And we talk a little bit later about a repayment schedule or a tenor. And in this example, we use 20 years, but that's not set in stone. We bring the expertise, the capacity, and the capability to the table to manage and implement a program of this scale. And we're also capable of bringing the financing to the table to pay for all of that up front, to basically implement the whole program on that timeline, so that the benefits can start being recognized in a shorter period of time. Why don't we move to the next one, Colleen? We can talk a little bit about some of the program benefits, and I think, Brian, I don't want to be duplicative. How much of this have we already covered with the commission?
I think we've generally gone through this. We didn't spend a lot of detail on this, but yeah, I mean, it doesn't hurt to update everyone on this. We haven't talked about it since August, so.
So essentially, GreenVest is a developer of ecological assets, and everything we do is land-based. So we seek out land that has natural resources that are impaired in their functionality. We secure access to that land, and then we're responsible for the design, the permitting, the construction, the maintenance, the monitoring, the long-term stewardship, and most importantly, the financing, where GreenVest carries the performance-based risk so that our clients only pay for performance. So that's the condensed version. There were a couple of things that I wanted to mention here. We did a very quick and dirty real estate search on Zillow, which everybody has access to. And since this time in 2019, there was $150 million worth of real estate transacted around the lake. And that represents a small fraction, we think, of the total real estate value around the lake. So there must be in excess of 1,000 homes that are waterfront, not including the second tier homes. And if you used a nominal value, average home value of $500,000, you're looking at a value nominally, just with the waterfront homes, of $500 million. So there's significant, and that's just the real estate value. We're not even talking about the sort of the tourism industry and the quality of life that drew people to buy this property around the lake that's being disrupted because of the HABs problems and the health of the lake. So, you know, with that in mind, we turned around and we tried to tailor the scope of a program so that we could talk about numbers. Colleen, maybe we can move to the next one. Thank you very much. So, and actually, Colleen, if you go one more, it's a little bigger so everybody can see. There we go. So we just blew it up, and we don't have to spend a lot of time on this slide. I think there are a couple of takeaways, and Brian or Aaron McCready, we have Aaron McCready with us, who's from Hannon Armstrong, our funding partner, and we can kind of tag team this slide a little bit. You know, what it does show is that the commission has been getting grant funding, and that grant funding could continue to be a part of this program, but it can't be the entirety of the program in terms of the repayment capital, the revenue that needs to actually repay the financing for the program. So we have the 4 townships that encompass the lake over on the left-hand side. And this is just one model where we're showing those townships, you know, being responsible for a portion of the repayment, where grant funds would continue to subsidize the cost of the whole program. We're showing that that the GreenVest team can greatly accelerate, you know, the design and the implementation of the entire program. Now, that could also include the septic to sewer conversion. We've had experience in doing that in other jurisdictions where sewering, you know, was identified as being able to have a very positive impact on water quality. In this example, we didn't include it because I don't think the commission in its work is as far down the road on that structural BMP as you are on the non-structural means, but it doesn't mean it cannot be considered. And then what we did was we framed a little bit of a debt financing and repayment schedule model with the help from our partners at Hannon Armstrong, and Aaron did a really good job there. One other really important point is over on the right-hand side, we've considered a long-term operations and management program. And again, that can be customized because, as you guys have already found out, and we've been listening to a little bit just on this meeting alone, these non-structural BMPs do require maintenance to ensure that they're functioning properly, you know, out into the future. So, Aaron and Brian, I think I touched on all the high points on this slide. Was there anything you guys wanted to add here?
I think you covered it. I think it's probably best we may go back and forth between this slide and the next slide. But the next slide, I think, is the meat of what we really wanted to present and try in an effort to answer some of the questions received in the last meeting.
So, Colleen, why don't we move to the last slide? And Brian, you know, I'll just set up the potential framework, and then I think Brian and Aaron, why don't you guys jump in and kind of walk us through some of the mechanics? So we went with this initial set of key metrics. It made sense to us. Brian can frame why we went with these metrics and what the $10 million represents. You know, and essentially we use the non-structural BMPs, the shoreline, the streams, the stormwater management BMPs, and again, the septic to sewer conversions can be added later. That's not included in this particular preliminary model. We've given some estimated interest rates, and the rates depend on a few things that Aaron will get into in a few minutes. We chose a 20-year term or tenor for the note, and in this particular model, we had tried to keep that annual payment to under $1 million, and we did that for a specific reason. So, Brian, why don't you jump in first and just talk about how we frame the scale of the program, where some of those numbers came from?
So the $10 million number came from using your WIP, and Fred or Princeton Hydro had estimated the construction costs and given you a kind of a lower and upper limit of construction costs. And the upper limit was $5 million. That was to implement every project, every non-structural project that you had in the WIP, and that was just construction costs. That didn't take into account design and permitting, long-term maintenance and monitoring. And in our experience, the construction, especially on smaller scale projects like this, is typically around 50% of a total project cost if you're looking at design permitting, and then the long-term maintenance and monitoring, which is key to the long-term success of any of these type projects. So that's how we came up with this $10 million placeholder, and that's really what it is. We wanted to try to frame something that everyone could get their arms around and look at what, you know, this could look like over, you know, like Brett said, we chose a 20-year turnaround period. We think that, you know, we could implement all these projects in a 3 to 5 year period. That's design, permitting, construction of all these projects. And then there could be a term of 20, could be more, could be less. But we thought that this could be something in a palatable range if we kept, you know, yearly payments around $1 million. And I think Aaron will get into, you know, some of the rates are going to range between 5 and 8. It all really depends on who the obligor, sorry, I may not be saying that correct, would be on a potential funding like this.
And Brian, before Aaron jumps in, I just wanted to sort of put our collective arms around this. So it's very positively impactful to be able to look at it in this way. So for $10 million, you design, permit, construct, and maintain and monitor your entire non-structural BMP program. And, you know, I think before we wind up and after Aaron, maybe Fred could say a couple of words about how positive that could be for the water quality of the lake. And what's really impactful about that is the timeline over which that could actually take place. And that's what really gets us excited about the methodology that we've pulled together and other clients that we've helped in the past, because we can achieve very significant results in a much shorter period of time. Aaron?
Hi, everyone. My name is Aaron McCready. I'm with Hannon Armstrong. We are a financial investor focused on climate change and ecological restoration. And we've partnered with the GreenVest team on a number of projects in the Chesapeake Bay watershed. I'm really going to just open it up for questions. This is a straw man, you know, just to kind of get the conversation started. You know, obviously the rates are dependent on the risk of repayment. The risk of repayment is depending on who's making the payments, which I'm not sure is totally clear at the moment. So I'll stop there, and you know, happy to open it up for questions.
Ron Smith, the chairman. So the question is, are these, because we're some kind of a government, we are a government agency, is there any chance that these are tax exempt bonds?
These would be taxable, as they would be performance based.
Because the only reason I ask you, because the interest rate is high, obviously, but the tax exempt with the interest rate's a lot lower.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the commission's ability to issue bonds, tax exempt bonds. You know, that's certainly one way you could pay for it.
I have no clue, but I mean, I'm an administrator for a school board. I just did a huge issue at 2.4%. So that's a big difference.
I don't know anything about the county or the financial statements at the issue that you just did. We've provided a straw man as a range to, you know, this is a pay for performance contract where, you know, no payment is made until the work is completed. And it's based on performance. You know, when you issue a tax exempt government bond, there's no performance element to that. It's purely the taxpayer's obligation to repay that bond.
There's no question about that. Yes. Okay.
How is the performance judged?
Aaron, why don't I take that?
Yep.
Fred, that's a very good question. The performance is based on the contractual obligation that's created between the GreenVest team and whoever we're contracting with. So, and I think Aaron probably stated it best, we're a little bit uncertain as to who the contracting authority would be. Would that be the Lake Hopatcong Commission? Would it be the 4 townships in this case? But the contract terms would spell out the performance metrics along with the scope of work. And I think the specific performance metrics may vary a little bit based on the specific BMP that's being implemented. So for example, a stormwater management pond, a wet pond, the performance metrics would be a bit different than a chunk of stream restoration. But any way you slice it, the performance metrics would be spelled out in the scope of work, which would be appended to the contract along with the balance of the contract terms. And of course, we would need to seek and secure permits from New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection. And there would probably be a variety of local permits that we would have to pull as well, township level. And there are different and specific performance metrics in each of those permits, which we're very familiar with as well. Does that answer your question, Fred?
Partially. Would the performance be dependent at all upon the results, the actual water quality?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I can chime in a little. So a lot of the BMPs that would be recommended, there's a lot of data available on what their removal rate should be. So we would use New Jersey's BMP manual. We would use water quality and stormwater monitoring to document the removal rates. And those can be directly linked to the TMDL on what the in-lake phosphorus concentrations would be. So we do have the tools to establish those water quality goals. And the other thing I just want to bring up real quickly, just in perspective. So for the TMDL, we've knocked down our targeted load by about 30% so far, but it's taken us 12 years to get to 30%. So this program obviously would accelerate that. And yes, we've reduced it by 30% over 12 years, but we're still seeing the halves because we haven't gotten to that water quality goal of that reduced load through the TMDL.
What would this reduce it to, Fred?
Well, you know what, I have to go back and look at the WIP. It really depends on which projects are implemented first. So it's sort of shuffling them around and determining, but we have identified in the WIP how much phosphorus we anticipate to be removed through each project. So more than likely what we would want to do is we want to tackle those projects first that are the ones that have the biggest removal rates of phosphorus, and then move further down from there. But this would be a sizable portion that we would be able to remove at least beyond 60% or more with the implementation of these projects.
60%.
Or more. Again, depends on what removal rates you use and what technology.
And what happens if they don't meet your goals?
Well, I mean, if it's not meeting the goal, the first thing we do is when we look at water quality data and it's not meeting the goal, there's something going on. There's something that's problematic. There's maybe something that wasn't designed properly or something that wasn't installed properly. I mean, we use the water quality data to determine how to improve things. For example, what we may find is, like, if there's a new, just hypothetically, a new stormwater pond, and that stormwater pond should have 80% removal, and we're consistently getting 60%. We may augment it with biochar to bring it up to 80%. So you use that data to determine if there's a deficiency, how can we enhance it to get to that goal?
How does weed harvesting correlate with a program like this?
Well, I can tell you, I don't know how it correlates to the finances of this program. I do know that we've quantified for the last 15 years, when we know how much plant biomass is harvested, we translate that to the amount of pounds being removed of phosphorus. And we did that because back in 2006, the commission gave us funds to do a real detailed combination plant survey where we identified how much phosphorus is in those plants. We use those formulas to estimate how much. I can tell you, depending on how much harvesting you do, the highest we've had was up to 12% of your targeted TMDL has been removed through harvesting. At the height of the recession, when very little harvesting was going on, it was as low as 2%. So it's really a function of how much plant biomass is being harvested.
But Fred, Fred Lubnow, when you go in and you implement a program of this scale and you reduce the phosphorus loading by up to 60%, you would expect to see the lake react by producing far less aquatic weeds.
Well, let me just comment on that, because this is something that I have to educate people on. What we're dealing with are the haves. And when you remove the phosphorus out of that stormwater, you're reducing the haves. When you reduce the haves, you increase water clarity. When you increase water clarity, you can actually have more aquatic vegetation. But I've always been telling people we would rather deal with the plants than the haves, because the haves generate the cyanotoxins, the haves close the beaches out. So I talk about it like short-term and long-term phosphorus. The short-term phosphorus is the phosphorus coming in through the stormwater. That stuff is immediately taken up by the haves. When those haves die and decompose and it settles into the sediments, that's long-term phosphorus. That's the phosphorus that the rooted aquatic vegetation uses. So we would expect to see an increase in clarity, a reduction in haves. We may see an increase in plants, but that's why for a lot of our long-term lake management programs, we focus on the watershed first, and then we move to dredging. And the dredging is where you're deepening the water, you're deepening that water column. That means less light is hitting the sediments, less aquatic vegetation. So I think of it as short-term, long-term phosphorus.
But if I understand correctly, if we adopted a program like this, we would still have to continue weed harvesting.
Yes, but what you're hoping is in the long term, you'll be able to reduce weed harvesting. Look, Lake Hopatcong is not a swimming pool. It will never be a swimming pool. You will always have to contend with Mother Nature. You will always have growth in the lake. What we want to see is more native aquatic vegetation. We want to see less of the invasives, like the Eurasian water milfoil, and we do not want any of the cyanobacteria hab blooms. More phosphorus means more haves, and that's why we're really focusing on phosphorus.
So if this was for instance, a 20-year contract, what happens about maintenance after that?
I think what we should talk about is the nature and the scope of the maintenance. So if you have 15, 20 BMPs, stream restoration, shoreline restoration, talking about is to maintain all of those systems. At the end of that 20-year period, I think you've got 20 years to figure out what you would do with the maintenance. I mean, you have to continue in an area that's so densely populated, and a lake that's used in the way that this lake is used. If you're using nature-based solutions, quite a few of those nature-based solutions should reach self-maintaining equilibrium. And some of them will be self-maintaining. Others will have to be maintained. Stormwater pond, for example, will have to be maintained. So, you have to develop a long-term maintenance plan that goes on and goes on and goes on. The main thrust of this program is to install these BMPs that have been conceived in the WIP, and they've been conceived in the WIP because of the maturity of the program and the fact that you've been able to identify what is going to have the most positive effect on the health and the water quality of the lake. It doesn't obviate the need to maintain. And I think in using your question as a straw man to draw out the conversation, Fred Steinbaum, I think it's important to understand those differences, right? You still have to implement these BMPs in order to return the health to the lake. It doesn't mean that you're going to be able to walk away from a maintenance obligation in totality, but it does mean that you should be able to manage it, and it should be much more economical over time. Fred, I don't know if you want to, Fred Lubnow, I don't know if you want to speak to that.
No, you hit it right on the head. I mean, maintenance is something, whatever project you implement, there's always some degree of maintenance. And I think what this provides is it provides 20 years of, okay, let's get a maintenance program going. Let's see what is the most effective way of maintaining these, and you should have that 20-year database that can then be used to continue on. And like you said, some of these programs, initially the maintenance is high, and then over time it sort of declines, where it's just more routine, maybe once a year thing. Like you mentioned, some of the ponds and some of the structures may need to be cleaned out every 5 years or 10 years, but all that can be worked out over that 20-year period. But everything requires some degree of maintenance.
But to be clear, this $10 million total investment will include maintenance for the 20-year term? Or there's additional maintenance required beyond the 10 million?
We still have to cut the weeds.
Well, aside from the weed cutting.
Yeah, the weed harvesting could be lumped into a funding mechanism like this, but this was, our long-term management was focused on the actual implementation of the BMPs and the WIP.
But I meant, Brian, if you had this contract, you would maintain the BMPs you're putting in for the 20-year term.
Correct. There'd be a term that there would be maintenance included for, yeah.
Okay. And then the other point I had is, I think really important to pursue a tax-free bond and to structure this program so that happens. There's a lot of nonprofits and government entities who would be participants here. So I'm sure it could be structured. That would reduce significantly from 5 to 8% rate. Because you're looking at the annual interest here of, what is it, 400,000?
Just to give you a ballpark, Bob, I did 40 million at 2.4%.
Right. So that would save hundreds of thousands of dollars off the chart.
So just a couple things on that. I've never seen a performance-based tax-exempt bond. And then the second thing is, if the townships have the ability to issue tax-exempt bonds, then
they do.
I guess maybe a question is, is there hesitation to invest the capital to clean up the lake?
Remember something on the total size of the townships that border the water. Sometimes it's not a real big piece of that township that's on the water and the people that get the direct benefit. There is indirect benefit from the businesses and the people that come in, but it's not like the whole town is on the water.
But those tax exempt bonds are built, maybe not the term performance based, but they're built on people have to produce something.
Yes.
From that bond. So there's some contractual thing there. So that could be done. So you could do a bond with some combination of government agencies and the commission and the foundation and nonprofits, so that you could wind up the person actually doing the issuing would qualify for
it's certainly worth looking into, Bob. It's certainly,
No, you're absolutely right. The towns could come together and issue a bond either together or independently, and then sign a contract with the GreenVest team to do the work. Yeah,
and
that's absolutely okay.
I'd like to see those numbers with that kind of an interest rate, because I think has a significant impact. As we all know, whoever's paying mortgages, how much the interest payments are throughout the term of the debt.
Sure. And Bob, I think you make a good point. There's also a political component here. And I think the sort of the veil question that Aaron was posing is, this is an important issue. And if it's an important enough issue, why haven't the towns, kind of come together or even independently decided to, turn around and maybe float a bond?
I don't think they've ever looked at a comprehensive solution like this. Is number one. Number two, I think if it's got to be a participatory thing. So
sure. You got to get all 4 towns to buy in. All 4 municipalities have to buy in. Yeah.
You get the 4 municipalities to buy in, the 2 counties, maybe the commission, maybe the foundation,
or the state. The state did this before.
They own the lake.
They funded the commission initially with $7.5 million. And
The
so,
more you can share the burden though, Fred, the easier it's gonna be to get everybody to participate.
yeah, and that was in 2000, and that was a comprehensive plan that included many of these things, including weed harvesting, of course. That was the main aim.
At that time, that was the main thing.
Yeah, and let me just add too that the HAB events in 2019 was really a wake-up call for everyone. I mean, it really seemed to bring everyone together. I mean, the 4 towns, the 2 counties, the commission, the foundation, all the stakeholders, the local organizations. I mean, they really all contributed and pitched in for the HAB grant. And I think that was I think just saying the word HAB, I think makes people take this more seriously than before 2019. So I really see a lot more cooperation among all the stakeholders.
So, right, I think what it would be good for the board, for the commission to see is this based on a tax exempt bond and see what those numbers would be, and to look at the specific quantity and number of projects, and to look at that estimate of what the phosphorus reduction would be, and look at how that could impact or protect against HABs. Then I think you'd have something you could sell, and then there would be a question of trying to carve it into manageable bites for the various participants.
Okay, anybody else have any other comments? So why don't you try, yeah, so they can just put it back and draw us up another chart. Let's see what, you're right, Bob. Let's see what it looks like with tax exempt numbers.
I have a question. Have any of the townships issued tax exempt bonds recently?
Towns? Sure.
Yeah, they're doing that all the
Schools and
time.
Towns do it every month, I'm sure.
Great.
They do it a lot for road projects and.
Actually, the one I did was a refinance. We saved $3 million over the next 20 years just refinancing the bonds. They had a high interest rate, and it's like refinance your mortgage. If it's more than 2%, it pays you to go do it. Because when you got those huge numbers in the millions, it's a big savings.
Right. You'll
That's
see
right.
a lot of activity, Aaron, if you look at municipal, county, and
Oh, it's going on a couple times all over the state. It's going on between the school boards and the municipalities and the other government aids and the counties. Believe me, it's going on all the time.
and it's some new construction, but a lot now refinance because
Refinancing because interest rates drop.
going
Yeah.
down.
So if I'm hearing everybody correctly, the next steps might be to put pen to paper and run some more numbers on a similar model where we've better framed the scope of the entire non-structural program. We've quantified the total phosphorus reduction, either in percentage or total pounds. And then we've run that at an interest rate that's comparable to a tax exempt bond.
Correct. That's perfect, bro.
Yes.
Okay. And I think, look, I mean, aside from the fact that, you know, GreenVest loves Brian. Brian's in the leadership of the company. Brian has made a personal investment in living up in God's country in North Jersey. And we want to help the commission. I think it's at certain points, we need to check back in with the commission, you know, as a for-profit company and have a reality check on whether or not this program is something of interest and something that a for-profit company like GreenVest should spend our time and energy on pursuing. And I say that with all the respect in the world for the mission of the commission, what you guys are trying to do. You know,
I mean, the short-term reduction of 60% phosphorus has to be a mission that's acceptable to the board. It's just commission. It's just a question, can it be structured right? And
How do we pay for it? That's the question.
how do we pay for it? And what's it going to cost and how do we sell it?
I thought you just said the townships are issuing bonds all the time.
They are, but you got to get the township to agree to do it, the four of them.
Right.
County.
Not easy.
Okay.
Right, which brings us back to you, Aaron. All right, and that's a lot of times why, you know, we end up in this situation where 5% doesn't look so bad if we're trying to convince 4 townships and 2 counties to float tax exempt bonds. Ron, with all due respect, you know, because we deal with this stuff all the time, and there are other ways to pay for it. And I know that, you know, some of the other ways to pay for this stuff is taboo. So we won't even go there on this call. But I think you've answered certain questions we had about how attractive a program like this could be. And certainly this team has solved these problems, you know, at this scale and at larger scale for others. So if it's of interest, and we can continue to have transparent conversations like this, which we very much appreciate, then we're more than willing to continue to pour our time into figuring out if we can make something happen together.
Yeah. So just so you know, Brett, on the local politics side of this, on this commission, you have one sitting mayor and two council people at least in two different towns. So you got some input, you know, you got some friends in court, so to speak, maybe if the thing gets reasonable, you know?
And the state has shown interest.
I said that tongue in cheek because we were aware, but we're trying to promote, you know, healthy dialogue here.
I get it, but
yeah, because we don't want to waste anybody's time, Ron. That's all.
Relationships. You know how that works.
I do.
Okay.
Well, we thank you very much for your time, and we will go back and do some more homework, and hopefully you'll entertain us again, and we can continue the dialogue.
We will. Let us know when you can come back up again with another chart, and we can begin some kind of serious conversations with other people.
Terrific. We're happy to roll our sleeves up and do that.
Okay.
With you.
Great.
And we wish everybody a happy and a safe holiday.
You too.
Thank you.
Thank you,
everybody.
Thank you, guys. Okay. Okay, where are we now, Colleen? We're back to Josh.
Yes.
Josh, you're up.
All right. So not a whole lot of updates, but a few. Just to give you a little bit update on the weed harvest program. Mike Calderio continues to look at the machines and figure out what parts need to be ordered in anticipation of working with the new diesel mechanic in January. So that's ongoing. A couple of things that I did want to highlight. One being, we still haven't heard back from Piosha the outcome of their investigation. And once that happens, then our state Piosha is going to have to sit down and write up new procedures for operating the machinery. So I'm glad to see that, Ron, you have a committee that's working on some alternate plans. Though we certainly are hopeful that we'll get resolution of this prior to the harvesting season. You know, as we all know, that may or may not happen based on, circumstances outside of our control. So we continue to work.
If we can get that machine, you know, where we can start to take a look at getting it back into the water, you know, I guess when I had that meeting up there, it was determined by the mechanic and Mike and Melissa was there, that it's certainly going to be cheaper in the long run to right off the bat is to put another engine in that thing and then take that engine out of there and then cannibalize it and use it for parts to keep the other guys going for a while. Because between the water and the cost of taking it apart to find out what's wrong and then all that time to get it back again, that was his initial plan. I mean, that could change, but that's the initial plan.
Yeah, that's one possibility. We've heard other theories. They don't make those type of motors anymore. The new motors are different. They have new sort of environmental standards. So as a result, it's going to require engineering because the weight of the engine is different and stuff like that. So
yeah, we'll look in, but I'm just saying,
it may not be cheaper, but we're certainly going to do our due diligence to try to get that machine.
Yeah, we don't want to have some oddball engineer that's different than all the rest of the harvesters if we can help it.
Sure. And then just to give everyone an update on the septic at the state park, we had a month or so back awarded a contractor. The contractor, for a variety of reasons, backed out, and then so then they went to the next highest or the next lowest bidder, and it looks like they're going to be signing the contract next week, and hopefully that work will then begin shortly thereafter. So
Good,
as
great,
I get more updates, I'll let you know.
good. This should be done before the next season, right?
We certainly hope, but until we meet with the new contractor and see what the time frame is, I don't know for sure yet.
Question, what about the construction on the building? The repairs?
So, yeah, so roof was done, but then as we were getting ready to do the mold cleanup from the water damage in the roof, we found out we have asbestos tiles.
Oh, no, my God.
Fred, Fred, don't ask him any more questions.
I'm sorry I asked.
So, but that work is all scheduled to begin after the holidays. So I think January 15th, the asbestos is going to get removed, and once we get all that done, then hopefully Colleen can have an office again.
What building is that?
The state park office.
State Park.
Oh, boy.
The more you dig, the more you find.
So that's all I got for tonight, Ron.
Okay, thanks. DEP updates? We have anybody, any reports?
I don't believe so.
Okay, we're gonna deal with the quarry in executive session. Anything about, Josh, you pass it along now, based on the fact that we're gonna go to June 30th as a minimum to get that MOU drafted back to us so we can act on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the MOU is fine. It's just, we just need the letter from the commission.
No, we need the MOU to look at before we give you a letter.
I can just, so I spoke with Marlon about that. So I guess and I didn't understand this and I needed to follow up with her. DP's waiting for a letter from the commission to move forward.
Yeah, I mean, my understanding is the MOU is fine. It can be.
Oh, I see. Okay.
We do a new MOU every year. We just need a letter and basically approve the budget.
We're gonna approve the budget through June 30th, 2021.
Right, and we had drafted that and then everything kind of went haywire. So I just have to look back at that and see if any adjustments need to be made.
Thank you.
And Dan, Fred, did you guys go to that CAC meeting? Nothing new?
Oh, I can give a quick update on that too if you want.
Sure, go ahead.
Real quickly, we basically, the last meeting that we had was coming up with the questions that we want to ask the DEP scientists. We came up with about 15, 20 questions. Some people couldn't make it to the meeting, so I forwarded our list of draft questions to everybody and asked them to give me questions, and I think up until next week sometime. And I have gotten some questions back, Dan McCarthy and other people. So once we have that final list, we'll send them to the scientists, and hopefully we'll be able to get some good feedback and facts about climate change and how water levels can change the HABs and stuff like that. So I think that'll help us a lot.
Great.
But the next meeting won't be until February, is that correct?
Yeah, I think we're gonna look at February because, I won't have the questions till December 15th. No way the scientists are gonna be able to do that in 2 weeks. So 2-3 weeks, especially with the holidays. So February, we'll
all right,
look to restart again.
good. We have any grant updates? Nothing? What do we?
No, I think Fred covered most of that.
Okay, and so then committee updates?
The land use committee, do we have?
Land use was listed here, so.
Okay, so the land use committee met, and as you saw, that we had a bill from Eric Snyder. The reason that was over $1,000, he went through a number of times all the local ordinances and regulations. which was our phase one in the land use committee, to find out what the limits were and what the regulations were currently, and what kind of variances have been being issued. And this next step in that, we were trying to then say, what are the best practices that the land use committee and the commission should recommend to the municipalities, and what methods we should be recommending for their land use reviews and land use approvals. Now, there is a new stormwater management ordinance, which is, I think, Lake Hopatcong is first one to move on and adopt. But even in light of that, we feel that there's more that we could be asking from the municipalities and more they could be doing to be effective. But it's not really the planners that can answer that question as much as it is the scientists. Follow the science there. So we asked Fred to put together or Princeton Hydro to put together a proposal, which is in the package. It's made up, it's broken. If you look at the proposal in the documents that Colleen sent, the task one is to compile information on the importance of green infrastructure to water quality. And there's a series of steps. And then compile examples of green infrastructure, I mean, from an engineering design, and say, here is what this littoral zone along the shoreline should look like. Here's what you're here's what you should require from these different types of applications. And then to give a summary report of why inclusion of those things and making those types of infrastructure applications mandatory will help the lake. So both Ken and Eric, and I think Colleen and I, and maybe the committee as well, I don't want to speak for the committee as a whole, feels that, the next step to really engage a municipal land use review is to build a scientific argument and some specific recommendations. And now that we know what the current regulations are and what the new ordinances, at least one of them is going to look like, we can take that information and build an argument and go to the municipalities with some ordinance changes. And so we really need to have this work done in order to make a cogent and understandable argument to the municipalities. Does that summarize what we talked about, Colleen?
Yes. I don't know if anybody else from the committee wanted to chime in.
Well, I'm not on the committee, but I do have a comment, which is something that a lot of our towns do not adhere to, is impervious cover.
Right.
The board's constantly overriding impervious cover. And I know here in Landing, we have lots with 2 and 3 sheds on the property. So there's no real reason for that. Small pieces of property. And they put them right in the front yard at times. It's impervious cover. So you don't get the drainage through the ground, it goes right down the street. Here too, right into the lake. So that's where we have a problem.
We were talking about that report, Fred, quantifying what 1 square foot of impervious coverage would mean. So we could talk about specifically why that shouldn't be the case, why those variances shouldn't be granted unless they could be mitigated with a specific type of other application.
Yep.
Am I speaking correctly, Fred, about what the report will tell us?
Yes. Again, it was Jack Sapansky and Clay Emerson. So Jack's a scientist, Clay's an engineer. They have a lot of experience with site reviews and ordinances. And that's my understanding, is anything that you want to do, you want to provide options and information on what the property owner can do to mitigate that impact.
And then back that into ordinance. form, you know?
Correct, yeah. Put that in the ordinance so they, it's clearly stated what the township would like to see done to mitigate that impact.
So it wouldn't be just, you could put in there, you could make changes to the impervious coverage, but it would have to be tied to not impacting the phosphorus. So it would give the board a tool to work with instead of just going, you should say no to everything.
Correct.
You could give them 1 square foot, but they've got to put rain barrel, 5 square feet of rain garden or whatever is that ratio. So that's the idea. And I know it was like $14,000, but we've been banging our head for a long time on this land use issues. So we're getting there. We know what they're requiring. We know how many variances they're giving. Now the next step is to be able to come up with this quantitative, objective data to go to the municipalities with, so we can develop some specific ordinances.
Yeah. The trick is the boards don't often do that. And you got to do it. If you want to keep that lake clean, it's got to happen.
Exactly. And this is the best path the committee could think of to follow that.
People will shoot me for saying that, but it's the truth.
Colleen, what about those enhanced suggestions that were published? I'm forgetting who sent them out, which group?
Oh, the Watershed Institute.
Yes. How much of a bearing might they have in helping us?
Well, those rules do, so that is just a model ordinance. And I don't know that it's tailored specifically to Lake Hopatcong, but it does include green stormwater infrastructure requirements for minor development and redevelopment. But yeah.
When we discussed it, Fred, I thought they would be using that as a factor.
Yeah, because that it's not geared for Hopatcong, but that will affect all the properties off the lake too. All, minor development.
Well, I think that's what we were talking about, right, Fred? Looking at this, Fred's report, looking at the whole basin.
Yes.
The whole drainage basin. So some parking lot that's adding 100 square feet of pavement along Route 15 that's draining into the lake would also be subject to this
right
impact.
Well, the governor has an edict out as far as the stormwater control, and I haven't read deeply into that yet. I have to do that.
That's his rain tax.
That's a
part
different.
of it. You're right. Part of it is the so-called rain tax.
But we're really looking at impacting local board decisions.
Well, that'll do it. Some of that.
Right, without a rain tax.
Yeah.
Just with ordinances and regulations, but we really need to have a strong basis.
Yeah.
So we want a $140,000 study from Fred for $14,000. Because you could build on all the work that's been done.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So anyway, I was hoping that maybe if the commission has a chance to review that, what would be our next step to move forward? Fred, do you think, did everyone in the land use committee feel that was something that we needed to do?
Colleen, I think you took some notes.
Of course she did.
Well, I think maybe the next step is probably to have the land use committee meet and discuss it.
Now that we have the proposal?
Yeah.
Okay, and then we can make a recommendation to
Yes.
at the next commission meeting.
Yes, that'd be great.
Okay, and if anyone has any questions of the land use committee after they've reviewed the scope done by Princeton Hydro, let us know. And
How are
we-
you going to sit down with the towns?
Hmm?
How will you sit down with the towns and speak about it?
Well, there's the mayor's meetings that you're having every other month. So once we have our act together and can speak cogently to them, then we prepare a presentation and put it into that meeting.
Okay.
Didn't want to bring it up until we had the answers
In most towns have master plan committees you can bring it up to.
as well.
The ones, yeah. Right.
I always like to start at the top and work my way down, like
Yeah.
go from there.
All right.
Okay, Fred, you're up with the lake level presentation.
Yes, well, I presented it last week. I think Colleen sent everybody the written proposals. And basically, the intention here, as I stated, is to preserve water in the lake. That's the primary intention. You know, in the last 2 years, we've had excessive rain. There's difficulty even lowering the lake now because we had 3 inches of rain last week and the lake went up almost 6 inches right in the middle of the process of lowering it. It was down to, from 9 feet to 8 feet 1 inch, and then it went back up to 8 feet 6 inch. So it's coming down again. They had to accelerate the drawdown. But again, this is going back to a very severe situation which we had some years ago where businesses around the lake actually sued the DEP. It eventuated in a court case and a settlement. And there was a lot of fighting and disunity among lakefront businesses and tenants and people living around the lake. And in recent years, because of the new problems we've had, like the haves, the lake community has really come together. And so my suggestions are kind of a compromise to try to make everybody happy that we won't risk not having enough water in the lake, or we'll decrease the risk of that without harming other things. And so this compromise presentation is what this represents. Basically lowering the yearly drawdown by an additional 4 inches, making it 18 instead of 22. And this means it could be started a little later in the year and completed easier. And that would extend the boating season and again, save 4 inches of water. The other part is the 5-year drawdown, which we feel needs to be continued for major repairs and construction. But to try to accelerate it by a small amount, but enough to allow completion much sooner, by October 25th. And that would allow the refill to begin sooner, which would allow for 2 extra weeks of allowing the lake to refill. And it would also allow any construction to be done in better weather. So the last time that we presented, it was a little different. It was a more radical presentation. And the commission voted on it and agreed to support it. And we presented that to the CAC with the commission's backing. The DEP did not accept all the recommendations, but they did agree to reduce the drawdown by 4 inches. And as far as we can tell, that's been successful. So I'm recommending that we recommend that these issues to the CAC, and they will hopefully recommend that to the DEP. That doesn't mean that any of this will happen. It just means that we support it and we may have some influence on the DEP's decision.
You did a good job, Fred, and you got some good rationale, and it'll be in time for Josh's next CAC meeting. So maybe the timing is good because they're getting ready the scientists are ready to do something. So anybody have any questions or comments on Fred's report?
I have a comment or two. I can fully support the recommendation as it concerns the 60-inch drawdown, because, Lord knows that should start sooner. We should be able to work in better weather, and it will be nice to close the dam up earlier and get the lake level back. I do have very serious reservations about going from what seems to be 22 inches to 18 inches. Whether anybody knows it or not, we are still technically within the pilot program, which reduced the annual drawdown from 26 inches to 22 inches. This annual drawdown started out many years ago in the 30s as 36 inches or 3 feet. Then it was reduced to 30 inches, then 26 inches. We are now at the pilot program of 22 inches, and now this discussion is to reduce it to 18. The pilot program, which reduced it from 26 to 22, we still haven't had any meaningful feedback or data on this pilot program because we haven't had a real serious winter since 2014, 2015. We also had one that was really bad in 13 to 14. The pilot program came into play after that. My fear is that if we play with this further and we go down to 18 inches and we have a bad winter with lots of ice, we're going to have issues with ice creep. If we have a really bad icy winter, the ice tends to creep up the shoreline and push anything in its way out of its way. So the further down the lake is, the less risk there is for damage due to ice creep. One of the other reasons for having the drawdown, annual drawdown, was to allow for the spring rains. If we have a lot of rain, having a buffer, room for the lake to rise is a help. Dr. Steinbaum just mentioned the fact, and I was going to mention it, but he did, but I'll just touch on it briefly. This rain that we had on November 30th, just shy of 3 inches of rain, you saw how the lake came up in half a foot in no time. If we have a couple of those storms, late February, early March, the lake comes up, then the ice starts to bust up. We're going to have huge sheets of ice, tens of acres in size, coming across the lake and crashing into things. I think we're much better off if the water is lower when that happens as opposed to higher, because if it's lower and it crashes up against the shoreline and busts up and piles up, it's going to have to climb higher than it would if the water is already high. So I'm very concerned about this one in particular. My recommendation would be that we accept the second half, about the 60-inch drawdown, and leave this annual drawdown proposal for further consideration and study under this pilot program.
Let me respond to that, if I may. I know you've been against the first part from the beginning, even lowering it the 4 inches, which the DEP did, and they call it a pilot program. And they asked for people to report if they had any additional damage as a result of the 4 inches that were saved. And there was no real reports. And your argument is that we really didn't have a bad winter. All I can say is I lived on both sides of the lake virtually all my life. I've had docks destroyed. I lost a boathouse to ice. The time that the ice is really destructive is when it breaks up and it flows. And when that happens, if it happens during a storm that's blowing it toward your shore, it doesn't matter how high the water is. It doesn't matter what you do to protect it. The ice will destroy everything. And really, in my humble opinion, it's more important to save water in the lake. And I don't think this extra 4 inches in any way can increase ice damage. So Dan and I have disagreed on this since we first discussed it probably 10 years ago. And I think that most people agree with me. But I guess we'll see. Evidently, the DEP agreed because they agreed to lower the outflow, to lower the amount. So they must have agreed.
Well, I do have to take exception to this whole pilot program thing and the fact that there was no reports of damage. if you have a series of mild winters, which we've had, you're not going to have ice, let alone the possibility for ice damage. So sooner or later, with the luck of the draw, the way things are going to go, we're going to have a very serious winter, and then we're going to have an issue. So that's a grave concern to me. The other thing, you mentioned the ice flows. That's correct, and that actually buttresses my point, because the higher the lake, the higher the level of the lake, and these sheets of ice, tens of acres in size, come floating across, the higher the lake is, the more dock damage you're going to have. So yes, that is a very serious concern, but I don't want to lose sight of the fact of the damage that ice creep can cause. If anybody has any doubts about what ice creep can do or what it looks like, I would invite you to look at the current water level management plan. There are multiple pictures in there that I took which document ice creep. And if you look at those pictures, you can see how the ice creeps up the shoreline and causes damage. This is not during the spring thaw. This is during the dead of winter as things start to warm up and the ice starts to expand. It pushes anything that's in its way out of the way. And the higher the lake is, the closer the ice is to the shore, and the more damage that you risk. So,
Well, in essence, people are protecting their docks and their waterfront with some form of bubbler or ice eater device.
And we know that, and we know we got a committee studying the negative and deleterious effects of that. So all this stuff ties hand in hand. So when you move your left finger, your right toe is going to move. You need to understand the connection, cause and effect. One thing will definitely have an impact on the other.
If we have a dry season again, like we did, we're going to have a war here on this lake again. All the good work that the foundation, and I must compliment Marty and the foundation on that, all the good work that they've done to kind of bring people together, the towns and the businesses and the homeowners around the lake, all that's going to go up in smoke again when the suits start. And if you don't have enough water in the lake, you don't have a boating season, and that's really trouble. And I just don't agree that the risk of the ice damage is increased by 4 inches.
Well, again,
that's our difference of opinion.
It's from 20, it went, as I said, from 36 to 30 to 26 to 22, and now you're proposing 18.
There must be a reason that everybody wants to lower it, Dan. That makes my point. There's got to be a reason.
No, it's just, we're on the 26 inches that is in the plan. That's the number 26, which is locked in the plan, not 22. 22 is based upon a pilot program, and we were going to wait and see after we had a typical winter what effects there would be, what type of damage there would be. And I understand you're worried about lawsuits if the lake doesn't come up, but if you have damage to docks, that's also going to beget the possibility of lawsuits. So I think, we should exercise caution here. We should wait until we have answers to this pilot program and be conservative and see what happens.
There are two other things that we're probably not considering either. Some people still work on their docks themselves and don't hire contractors, and they'll typically do that. Maybe they'll take a week of vacation before Christmas or between Christmas and New Year's. So if you start refilling the lake on December 1st, you're really going to inconvenience them. Another thing that I don't think you're thinking about is weed control too. We need lower water during an extended freeze period to do more damage to the weeds, to curtail their growth in the subsequent season. And the extended freeze really doesn't happen until you get into January.
So you're supporting both items.
Not even close.
Well, Mr. Chairman, should we call for a vote of support?
Yes, let's go. Let's again. Anybody else have any? Without repeating ourselves, maybe it's just time to take a vote and see where we stand on this.
I have a question.
Sure.
Fred?
Yeah, it's me.
Is any scientific basis, one way or another, for going with this lake level?
It's,
put
You know,
that's
the
one of
problem is it's all based on weather. And what we know is those
we can't
extended
control it.
freezes aren't as common as they used to be because of climate change. I can say that. So using it to control plants, it just makes it more and more difficult. But with that said, the models of climate change do see these wide swings in terms of weather. We are due for another heavy winter. Whether we get one or not, it's the roll of the dice. It's real difficult for me to try to put this in a scientific point of view because it's so pitted in, the management of docks.
Because even if it's a 10-year cycle of getting warmer, it doesn't mean you can't get a one bitter cold winter.
Correct. As a matter of fact, it will still happen. It may not happen as frequently, but it will certainly still happen.
So if we get,
what about another drought?
Yeah,
Or
I mean,
another drought.
droughts as well. But what we're seeing are these wider swings. So we'll go through a prolonged drought, and then all of a sudden we get 2 to 3 inches of rain. So instead of instead of getting these small to moderate storms, now we have prolonged droughts, and then we get like a heavy storm, prolonged drought, heavy storm. And that's, again, ties to the HABs. It's one of the reasons why we see HABs more, is because you're putting all that water in, but if the water level's already down, water's not leaving, the algae are using those nutrients. I mean, I could go on and on, but I'm not going to.
Well, Marty will tell you, you read the old Hopatcong Times magazines, as we do every month, even in season here. We're talking about the same thing we've been talking about for the last 50 years. Am I right, Marty? Nothing's changed.
Yeah, you're absolutely.
Except the weather.
You're absolutely right. The real solution.
What works.
The real solution here is impossible for us because we're overdeveloped. The real solution, I've talked about it, I've seen it on other lakes. Docks should be removable in the winter. We shouldn't have boathouses. We shouldn't have concrete walls around the lake. They should be natural. They should be rock.
The Fred is the point is we do have these things, and I don't see boathouses and docks disappearing overnight. So we have to worry about protecting them.
We can go on, and I don't want to bore everybody. So I'd say let's call a vote. Whether or not.
Mr. Chairman, could I just make one suggestion in that I see a dichotomy here? Could we split this into 2 parts, Part A and Part B, and have a double vote so that maybe others can decide they want to go for both or go for one?
okay, so why don't we vote on the obviously easy one? The second part is the 60-inch drawdown.
Do you need a motion?
I make a motion that we vote on my proposal for the 60-inch drawdown.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any comments or questions? Let's call a roll, please.
Zochek?
Yes. Willing to try anything.
Fish?
Yes.
Wolfram?
Yes.
For
McCarthy?
the 60-inch, yes.
Wazowski?
Abstain.
Steinbaum?
Yes.
Stevens?
Abstain.
Tessier?
Yes.
Gilfillan?
Yes.
And Smith?
Yes. Okay, now there's a motion on Fred, since it's your proposal, the motion on the first part.
Yes, I make a motion that we accept the first proposal of lowering the annual drawdown from 22 inches to 18 inches.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Comments, questions? I guess we talked it to death. Would you call a roll, please, Colleen?
Doncheck,
Yes, again, willing to try anything.
Fish,
Abstain.
Ooh,
Overcamp,
No.
McCarthy,
No.
Ozowski,
Abstain.
Steinbaum,
Yes.
Stevens,
Abstain.
Tessier,
I mean, I can't answer the question, but I'll vote yes, just for Fred.
Thanks.
Sorry.
Gilfillan,
If it's a problem, we can go back.
Abstain.
Smith,
Yes. Not, well, how many yeses and how many abstentions you got?
got 4 yeses and 1, 2, 3, 4 abstentions, 2 noes.
So it passes.
That's, yeah. The abstentions go with the majority, do they not?
They do.
It passes. All right, well, thank you all.
But now again, this just goes to the CAC now, and then it
Right.
goes to D.
Right.
They may refuse any of this.
They did last time.
Yes, so it's just, I'm just gonna present it, there were objections. Thanks very much for considering it. I'm done.
Okay.
Where are we?
Since is there any new business, new items? Okay. So now we got public comment and then we have an executive session.
What
So
about this insurance,
Yeah,
Fred?
there was one new. So the only thing with that is that I did reach out. Am I muted? No. Okay. I did reach out to Scottish American Insurance. I've contacted them several times to get some clarification. I finally got a call back, which I missed. I called them back and I haven't heard anything. So hopefully I'll have an update I can send out by email to everybody soon.
it's called telephone tag. Yeah.
Yeah. It's the worst.
Okay. So no matter what we do in discussing, we all know what we're going to discuss, kind of the topic in an executive session. There's no action going to be taken. So we could do the public part, because if nobody wants to hang around while we're in executive sessions, because does anybody believe we're going to take action coming out of executive session on that proposal?
No.
No, but maybe we do want to take action on the resolution that's here so that anybody who's
Which resolution?
the resolution. So as part of the 319 grant agreement.
Oh, yes. Okay, yes. Somebody move that.
So moved.
Second,
Comments, questions?
Yeah,
Call
just
the roll,
to
please.
emphasize, there's no monetary match with that one, correct?
Right.
Well, is Fred Love now still on?
Yep.
So DP did have us from the original application divide that into a monetary and in-kind, but the monetary was only just the water quality monitoring, right?
Correct.
Okay, so that's just normal.
That's our match. Yeah.
That's the match.
Yeah, it doesn't cost us anything.
There's no like actual monetary.
There's
No additional, yeah.
No.
Okay.
There is, but it's
You
something.
pay for the water. You're gonna monitor the water anyway. Yeah.
Okay.
Would you call the roll, please?
Sure. Zoscheck,
yes.
Fish,
Yes.
Camp,
Yes.
McCarthy,
Yes.
Kozowski,
Yes.
Steinbaum,
Yes.
Stevens,
Yes.
Tessier,
Yes.
Gilfillan,
Yes.
Smith.
Yes. Now, I'm going to open the meeting to the public, and I'm going to preface my remarks by saying that when we go into executive session, it's going to be discussing legal matters. No action will be taken if you don't want to hang around. Okay. And we will comment on that in the future, if and when we come to some resolution with it. Okay, so I'll open the meeting to the public. Is there anybody wishes to address the commission? You see anybody, Colleen?
I do not. Anybody did want to address the commission, you could use the reaction button. You should also be able to unmute yourself.
Okay, seeing nobody, I'll close the public session. Entertain a motion to move to executive session, to discuss legal matters.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we're in exec. Colleen, can you shut off the public?